Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so PictureFrame, and I'm going to go to Dropbox, shared, guides. That's odd. So how did that become PDFs? That's interesting. Pavilion guide plan. There we go. Pavilion guide plans, reindeer floor plan. That's what we want. Sorry. Reindeer floor plan. Okay. Open that. And then with this drag.
It's under
Pavilion guide plans, sorry.
because they're looks like the example guides really helpful. And you don't have to really helpful.
Appreciated examples, guides, and then this was a
Did you refresh? Are you on the web?
You just type in right here.
But you don't have that file? Does anyone else not have the reference guide plans on Dropbox?
appreciated, like I said, empty files.
Okay, so let's see here. So you should have, I'm going to go back here. So who does not have this file structure when you open up that shared folder? So if you go to here, F14, 2010, 102, does anyone have this? Does it look like this at all?
It's from the second link. There's like 2 links in 2 links.
You got it now? So it's on the second link that I sent?
I think first.
The first one? Okay. Okay, so once you have this guide plan, we can zoom in here and you can see that we have dimensions. So this is what we're going to be able to dimension to. Now, when we do this, what's going to happen is that what we want to do is create a box, and we want to create kind of a 0 point where we can start to reference both the plans, the elevations, and the sections all from one kind of point. So there's 2 things that we want to do. One, we want to select this thing. We want to determine where that 0, 0 point is, where the origin that we're going to model all these things of. And so what I'm going to choose is the bottom left-hand corner. And so I'm going to pick this point. I'm going to type move. And I am going to move from this point. I'm just going to guesstimate. And when you do these things, you can see how the line has thickness. Try to get in the center point of that thickness of the line, okay? Not to one side, but try to get that crosshair in the middle. Click there, and then I'm just going to type 0 because I just want to move it to the origin. Okay, so now it's at this origin. And then it's going to ask me to, now I want to do is scale this thing. So we have some dimensions here that will help us scale. So one of the things that I want to do is look at, since I have this origin here, what I can do is I have 13,500. That's the outside dimension of this piece. So select it again, and then we're going to type scale, and it's going to ask for the origin point. So we're going to scale from this corner, so we'll type 0, and then I'm going to move over to this outside edge, which is like right there. And then it's going to ask me the second reference point. And see, now I can start to scale it, but I'm just going to tell it that I want that to be 13,500 millimeters, which is the size of that outside dimension.
How did you get it on the RGB?
Just type 0.
Did you select like the outside corner of the picture or
The outside corner of the plan, because I want this plan, this bottom left-hand corner of the plan. So you want to. This is where I want to start to scale from, because I know that this dimension, the overall dimension of from here to here is 13,500. So if I select everything here and I put this point as 0, 0, then everything will. I can align everything and keep everything together.
So
Yeah.
how did you select that point?
Okay, so I have this selected, then I type move, and then I just come down here, click this, get it in between, and then type 0 because that's where I want it to move it to. And then that way I have a constant point that I know I can dimension from. Now once I have that scaled, I can click this here and make sure that I have it on the right layer. So I'll start to get in my reference layer. So one of the things I want to do is put this, we'll call these ref images. Go down to the bottom, put it on the ref images layer, and then I can lock that layer. So now when I'm doing things, I'm not going to be able to select this, so I won't screw up and move it and get that messed up. So we have that. So the next piece that the other thing that's nice is that now that we're in the perspective mode, it's aligned so that we can start to build in 3 dimensions. So now let's get it our elevation. So let's make that. We'll do the same thing, PictureFrame. Then I'll open that. And then again, I'm just going to click and drag. Make sure that you have the ortho selected or you're holding down the shift key so it comes in straight. Okay, so now that we have that, we want to think about what our direction is so that we align the right image to the right place. So if we're looking at the top, we can look at this plan and we can see that the door here is going to be on the right hand side. So when we look at the elevation, the one that we align to the base plane, make sure that the door, we don't want this one because the door is on the other side. So what we want to do is align this image, the upper image, to our 0, 0 point. So we have that selected, and I'm going to go over here, and here's our bottom left hand corner. Okay. And I'm going to type move. Point to go from is this bottom corner. Click on that, and then I want to move that to 0. I just type 0. Okay, so now that that's aligned, and you can see that our plane from this red line from the other image is aligned with both of those pieces. Okay, if I double click here, I can go and look at my perspective. And let's put this on our default reference images layer. What I'm going to do real quickly is just change this background so that you guys can maybe see it a little bit better. Okay. So there's a couple of things that we can do here. That's interesting. For some reason mine is not showing up. Try this again. Oh. Okay, so now we want to scale this image here. Okay. Okay, so we have this piece here. Now I'm going to scale this from this bottom left-hand corner to the edge. And we know that's 13,500. Okay, now we can move it from that same bottom point to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to lock. So now we have these things, but you'll notice that I can't really see through this. So that is going to actually make it a little bit more difficult to model here. So what we want to do is to adjust the transparency of both of these pictures. So if we select both of them by going to the layer, make sure it's unlocked, and then we can right click and go down to select objects. Oh, I locked the other one, so hold on. You can lock and unlock layers, and you can lock and unlock individual items. So sometimes I lock individual items if I'm still working on the same layer. So now that I have them both, you can right click and select all the objects, or you can just do a crossing drag. Now if we go over to our properties palette, you can see that we have object, material, and texture. We want to go to material, and we can just come down here to basic settings and click on some transparency. So let's say somewhere around 36% transparency, 30-ish. Now we can start to see through these things. Not quite a lot, but it's a good starting point, okay? And that's one of the reasons why if you work on a white background, sometimes it's a little bit easier to see, because if you're doing transparency, the line work will show up a little bit better. But okay, so let's go back to our layers and lock those up so we don't mess around with those. And then we have one more image that we can put in here. And we're going to put that in the right side. Well, let's go and take a look here. Might be the right, might be the left. I think it's actually going to be the left. So what I'm going to do is change this viewport by clicking on the little arrow, and I want to set the view to be left. So I'm looking at it from the other direction, because I think the section is made from the left side. Okay, I'm just expanding that. So now I see this here. And then what I'm going to do is go again and do PictureFrame. And reindeer typical section. Open that. Again, drag it out. I'm just going to double check by going to my perspective and making sure that it looks right. Okay, yeah, the wood's on the right side. Okay. So back to my left. And what we're going to be doing here is looking at these bottom corners. So one of the things that we have is that this bottom corner is right here. So this will be our 0, 0 point, this bottom piece. And one thing that we want to look for is to get this scale. So I'm going to scale it first and then move it. So I have 6600 from this top edge, from the gutter over here, all the way to the other side. So let's do that. Select that, scale, go over here. Move over to this side. Now the other way you can do it if you have dimensions is just to do it on the dimension point itself. So let's try that. So I'm just going to select this right here. It's going to ask me for the second point, which is the other end of that scale, the dimension. Okay, so we've got that, and I know that this is what, 6600? So type in 6600. Okay, so we're set there. Now the next thing we want to do is to get our point. So one of the things I like is to just go back and confirm all of our places where we've chosen our 0, 0 points. So we're here, we can see it's at the front edge, not at the angled edge. So if we go back to our left, it's going to be this point right here. So we have this selected. We'll type move. We're going to pick this point here and type 0. Now while it's selected, I'm going to go over to my properties, making sure that's selected, and then I'm going to change that transparency also to something we can work with. Okay. Now I'm done. I'm going to put it on its correct layer. So now it's all locked up. So now we have all of our reference images so that we can see how we want to build this thing in dimensionally. So one other thing, just to fix some of this, is that I want to be able to select what image I'm seeing here. So if I could do that by going and hiding each of these things individually, but instead I think what I want to do is just add some sublayers to this reference image. So I'm going to add, oops, it's not what I wanted. Okay, so I have 3 layers. So I'm going to call one plan. Elevation. And section. Okay. So now I'm going to unlock this, and then I'm just going to put select this plane, and then we will put it on reference images plan. Lock that guy. Select the elevation. Go down here to the bottom. Put it on elevation and the section. Section. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is make sure that those are all locked. So now they're not selectable, and we have basically everything that we need to start modeling this section. So when we're doing this, we want to start thinking about how we would break this thing into modeling it. So we have basically, the way I see it, kind of 3 main components of the model. You have the site and the topography, so that'll be one big element that you want to have separated. Then you'll have the metal box as the core around it. That would be another piece that you would want to model, probably individually. And then you have this wood section in the middle, which would be probably its own element. So what I'm going to do is create, or just rename these layers and start to organize my layers. Site, I'm going to call it box, and I'm going to call it wood. There's probably better names for it, but that's what I'm going to use for now. And right now I don't need layer 5, so I'm just going to delete any sort of extraneous layers. And you can start to think about how you would organize this work too. So maybe I have a sublayer that's going to be topography, and then maybe another sublayer, another layer underneath site that would be maybe vegetation, and maybe another one called paths. And the reason I'm doing this is so that what I find is if you have kind of a game plan of what, if you're looking at and you analyze and get a game plan about what you're going to need to model, it just sets up a framework for you to start to do that. So in the box, I'm going to have some things like the envelope, the outer skin. I'm probably going to have another thing like the internal structure, so I can start to see the beams and things like that. And then I'm also going to have a foundation. And let's see, then I'm going to have, I know that there's some glass, so I'm going to have windows. I'm also going to have a door that's going to have its own thing. Now the door might be associated with this wood piece. So right now I'm putting it as box, but it very easily could be a part of this wood, and maybe it is. So maybe I'm just going to drag, click, hold, and drag that down, put it under the wood. Okay. Let's see, what else are we going to have? We're going to have some stuff. It looks like there's a fireplace in there, so I need to have a layer for furniture that I can turn off and model separately. Okay, so basically this is the outline of the model. So I have it all organized. I know how I'm going to model it. And then under these different layers, I might have additional layers that we want to put in there for sub-objects. Use the layers to be able to turn on and off things so that as you're modeling one particular piece, you don't get confused by all the other pieces around it. So that's one of the main reasons of having this kind of layered organization. It allows you to model quicker. It allows you to lock these certain elements. So if you're modeling on the interior wood piece, you might need that outer box, the outer envelope as a reference, but you don't want to be clicking and moving it accidentally all the time. So being able to lock that layer down so you can model and see it as a reference guide, but not have to select it is really important. Excuse me. All right. So now that we have this piece here, we can go about modeling it a couple of different ways. Okay, so we can do basically two methods. I'm going to show you the two different methods that you can go about doing it. And I prefer one method over another, but it's sometimes the great thing about modeling with these tools is that it gives you lots of different options. So some people think about how you build something differently. So the way I think about it could be different than the way conceptually how would click with you. So there's a way in which we could say, okay, I'm going to build, I know this is a box conceptually, and then I can subtract all the pieces that I don't want in it. So that could be one way. I could do it as a subtractive process, okay? Or, which is the way I like to think about it because it's more in line with the way things are built, is I like to use an additive process where I build piece by piece, plane by plane, element by element, just like I would build it in terms of architecture, okay? So that's one, I like to build that way because that's the way I think about it. However, you want to be careful about what your intended kind of outcome is, okay? So if you are just about kind of putting in and trying to just get a shape or an outline, for instance, you might want to just look at that kind of box method and subtractive method. If you're kind of thinking about it conceptually or diagrammatically, then that's an appropriate kind of process and tool to use, set of tools to use or techniques. But if you're building it to build and to eventually pull off plans and technical things like this, I think a constructive method is a little bit better. So I'm just going to go over the subtractive method really quickly because I think that this is really good for conceptual stuff. So this could become a way of quickly doing some more additional diagrams. So I'm going to create a box. So I go over here, click on box. My first corner of the box is going to be that 0 point. Okay. And I'm going to turn off my ortho snap for a second. And then I'm just going to click over here to this bottom side. Bam. And now I can go over here and go to my left side. And I can raise that up So you can see how we can use these things. Bam, we have our box. So if I go back over to perspective, I have the rough size of the box. It's dimensionally scaled. It's accurate. So then I can do some other things here. So these are all modeling on the default. So usually what I do is model onto the default and then move it to where I want it to go. Okay, so here's my outer skin, and I know that this is going to be concept, so I'm going to put this as a sublayer. And then I'm going to lock it down because I'm going to do some other things. So I've got that. Now I can go to the front. And I can come in here and make another box. Let's see, maybe I want to do it from the other side. Yeah. But now we can see we have a kind of a weird shape here. So maybe what I want to do is, instead of doing a solid, maybe I want to do a curve. So let's go to Curve Tools, and let's do, or you can type in Polyline. And so now all I'm going to do is just trace this unique shape. Hold the Shift key down so I keep it orthogonal. And then you notice that I'm going to make it a little bit bigger because this is going to be the shape that I subtract. So I'm just going to guesstimate so we can come back and fix it. Okay, so let's see, how close am I? I'm pretty close. So once I have this selected, if I want to fine tune it, I can go to Standard and then Edit Points, and then just select these points here, and go over to my gumball here and just grab and move them up a little bit so that they're online. Hit Escape to get out of those edit points. So now if I go to Perspective, I have this piece here, and now what I can do is extrude it, but what I want to do is look at where it is in relationship to the front and move that piece over. Okay. And I can look at it in plan to make sure that that's where I want it to be. So I really want it to be there. Okay. And then I can type extrude curve, and I want it to be solid, yes. And then I just extrude that over here. Go back to my perspective, and you can see that I have the solid. Now I can come back and unlock this piece, and then I can use Boolean. So I can go Boolean, and I want difference because I want to subtract. Okay. So it asks you to select what we're going to take away from first. So we'll do that. Hit Enter, and then it's going to ask you what you want to cut with. That's this one. Hit Enter, and boom, we have our solid, our conceptual model. And then I can use this plane, or I can just delete it. And then we'll have to do some cleanup. So we'll have a couple of other actions here to create these angles. And that's also something that we can do later. But that's it for today in terms of this will give you a basis to start working on your model. And one of the things I want you to start thinking about in terms of modeling is build something and try to stay organized. Build it, move it to the layer, lock down, or keep yourself organized. So if you just get in the habit of creating geometry and then organizing it and putting it where it's supposed to go, you'll be able to start to build this much faster. So one of the things I want you to look at is there's a couple of additional videos on from last semester's on my YouTube channel from this class last semester that shows you how I taught modeling this last time. So you can go onto the YouTube page and use those as references to get started. And basically all I want you to do from here on out is just start modeling your project. You already know the techniques, you already have the background images to start modeling your site. So you know how to do that now. So I would go back in and start there, start to model that piece, and then get into modeling the building. And then on Wednesday, basically, it's going to be a work day, Wednesday and Friday. I might show you a couple of techniques at the beginning of class, but otherwise it'll be just working on this assignment. Yes? Wednesday. Yeah, so when you put together how many pages is up to you, okay? But what each page should have its own kind of meaning, okay? So it could be about site relationships. That could be one page if they all go together, okay? But if you're talking about two different types of things, like site organization in terms of circulation versus viewpoints or conceptually, that might be two different pages. Would be another page. Yeah. Yep. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So work on that. Get these things kind of tightened up and ready to turn in. And we'll be turning those in onto the Angel site. We'll set up a folder that you could submit those to and get that. No, I believe it's before class, 8 a.m. Yes.
Are those measurements in inches?
Millimeters.
Okay, so.
Everything this is a European project, so everything's in millimeters. Okay? Other questions? If you go onto you cannot access the Angel site because the link is also on the Angel site. So both classes, Angel site, we have two different classes, both of them up there. The links should work. Okay?